Notre Dame has been very quiet in the transfer portal here in the spring window. Does that mean they're just ready to compete? Tyler Wojciak, Locked On Notre Dame, joining me here on the show. Is that what it means, Tyler? Has there not been any buzz at this point because Notre Dame doesn't need to make any moves, or have they just not made any moves yet?
I think they haven't made any moves yet. Now, for one, they have 88 scholarship players currently. So it's not like they have a ton of room on their roster. They lost a cornerback to the transfer portal on Tuesday, and that was just a guy who was pretty deep on the depth chart. His name's Micah Bell. Didn't really have a role on this year's team, and it didn't look like he was going to project to get much playing time in the future. A couple things they do need, I think most notably a punter, believe it or not, because they just lost their punter to the transfer portal and they don't really have anyone else. So that's the first thing. They need to add a punter. They also, I think I would really prefer if they added an offensive tackle, but offensive tackles are pretty hard to come by in the transfer portal. But other than that, I really don't think they need a ton. I already mentioned the fact that they're already over the scholarship limit. I feel like throughout the roster, positions are strong. They're deep. They don't really need anyone, but I think an offensive tackle is crucial. A cornerback would be nice just for depth purposes, and a punter is absolutely necessary. And I expect them to make some moves here in the near future now that spring practice is officially over.
Yeah, they've only added 8 players in the transfer portal in this 2024 cycle. Now, Notre Dame, of course, recruits well, and that's been the case for the last couple of seasons under Marcus Freeman. They've had 18 players depart the transfer portal. Now, if I were trying to be in the clickbait world, Tyler, I could spin that as Notre Dame portal disaster. -10 in the portal. It's all a mess. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to ask you in a more critical manner, why do you think that is the case?
Well, there's a couple things at play here. I would say, for one, Notre Dame and undergraduate transfers. And when I say Notre Dame, I'm referring to the University of Notre Dame. It's a lot harder for an undergraduate transfer to get into Notre Dame because of the academic restrictions that they place on transfers. I actually transferred into Notre Dame after my freshman year of college, so I can actually speak to that from my own personal experience, and I can tell you that when you're trying to transfer to Notre Dame, it's a lot harder than at any other school, not just because of the academic requirements in terms of grades, GPA, test scores, all that stuff. I'm talking about your curriculum. Like, what classes are you taking? Because they have a first year of studies program that is a little bit different than most schools. So that really is an impediment a lot when Notre Dame is looking to add undergraduate transfers. They basically have to be going into their sophomore year, or they have to be grad transfers. So the door is more open for players to leave than for guys to come in. So I think that's one thing. And I also think another thing, too, is Marcus Freeman has prioritized high school recruiting since the moment he became the head coach at Notre Dame. And I think he's elevated recruiting as much as he possibly can. They're still not in like the top 5. And I think a big part of that is the fact that Notre Dame really doesn't hand out a ton of NIL money to high school recruits. They're happy to give it to guys who've been in the program or transfers. I mean, Riley Leonard and Sam Hartman got a big old bag to come to Notre Dame. So it's not like they won't do it. It's just the way that they prioritize it has more to do with the older guys than the high school recruits. So I just think that with the way that they've recruited, they have a lot of guys. They don't have a ton of needs, and it's just a little bit harder for them to add people, especially undergraduates.
So a couple things. First of all, Keelan Crimmins from Mississippi State is the highest rated punter available in the transfer portal right now, according to our friends over at 24/7 Sports. He entered in the spring window the day it opened on April 16th. I'm just saying that might be the guy pinning everybody deep. Somebody's got to win the Ray Guy Award. That's the punting award, right? That the that the Iowa punter wins every year, of course. Second, Tyler, with the very subtle and humble flex that I picked up on about his academic prowess, saying that he's able to transfer into Notre Dame. They've got these very tough requirements, and I did it personally, and I'm willing to bet myself and 90% of our audience wouldn't be able to do that. I don't know if everybody else caught that, but I definitely.
Hey, all I'll say about that is the reason I transferred in is because I wasn't good enough the first time. They denied me, so I'll humble myself a little bit. So they didn't like me enough the first time, and I think I just begged them and annoyed them so much, referring to the admissions department. They're like, finally, just let this dude in, so he'll leave us alone. So it's a lot
Persistence.
I would say it's a lot less of a brag than you might think.
You can sell that as a story of persistence, which is what I would advise, or you can sell it as a story of I just annoyed them so much they said, "Fine, just make him go away, make him go away." But the thing with Notre Dame in the portal is it's not as easy as other places, but it doesn't feel like it's as restrictive as some spots. Like Northwestern can be tough. Stanford is really the quintessential example. Like Stanford can recruit high school kids at a pretty high level. If things are going right, they can pull in top 20, top 30 classes. But their university won't let them add transfers. And I just wonder if that's going to allow them to compete. I don't think that is a hurdle at Notre Dame the way that it is at Stanford. Am I correct in thinking that?
I agree with you. I think that what Troy Taylor is going up against at Stanford is much different than the case at Notre Dame. Like, as difficult as it is for some guys to get into Notre Dame, they'll make some exceptions, but Stanford is just playing an entirely different ballgame. And it's sad because Notre Dame-Stanford is a rivalry, but I still like when Stanford is fun and they're competitive. I mean, the David Shaw, Jim Harbaugh days feel like an eternity ago, and it's really hard for me to imagine them ever getting back to that so long as they have these policies regarding the transfer portal.
Yeah, I think it is tough. And as an Oregon guy myself, I have fond memories of peak Stanford. That was a vibe. The farm was not always empty. They used to pack the farm when Stanford was not so much the case anymore. But bringing this back to Notre Dame, they have added 8 players from the transfer portal, all in the first window. We'll see if they add any more as the spring window progresses. But who are the guys, maybe 1 or 2, that are new via the portal this year for Notre Dame that you're looking at to make an impact for the Irish this year?
Well, Riley Leonard's the biggest one, obviously the quarterback from Duke, but his time at Notre Dame so far has been really interesting because he actually suffered a pretty significant injury on his last play against Notre Dame last fall. They were trying to score. Notre Dame had just come back to take the lead with under a minute left. Riley Leonard got sacked, fell down awkwardly, really messed up his ankle, had to leave the game in crutches, and then he tried to come back. He was never really healthy. They eventually had to shut him down for the rest of the 2023 season. Then he comes to Notre Dame, misses the start of winter workouts because he finally got surgery to repair that ankle. And then he was out there for the start of spring practice. And then he had to have another surgery on that same ankle because there were some complications from the previous one involving a stress fracture. I don't know all the medical details, but it forced him to miss the remainder of spring practice. So he is the guy. He is the quarterback that is definitely going to start when Notre Dame heads to College Station for the season opener. But up to this point, Notre Dame fans and the coaches really haven't been able to see a whole lot from him. So I still have a ton of questions about him. I want to be optimistic, but it's one of those things where I got to believe it I got to see it and then I'll believe it. As for someone else, I would say that, they added a couple of receivers in the transfer portal that they desperately needed. Bo Collins, Chris Mitchell, Jane Harrison. I imagine at least one of those guys will make an impact. But I'm going to go to the defensive side. Another Duke transfer, oddly enough, RJ Oben. He had 5 sacks last year for the Blue Devils. He is going to start for Notre Dame at the strong side end position. He can get after the passer. He had a sack and a forced fumble in the spring game. So it looks like 2 Duke guys are going to be key players on Notre Dame this year. And I guess they are kind of like-minded universities and everyone else hates them for reasons that I understand, by the way. I totally get it. So I'm not going to try to fight back at all. But it is kind of funny how it all worked out.
Yeah, and that opening week game at Texas A&M, one of the headline matchups in week 1 of the college football season. I mean, when the summer months roll around, I think we'll be diving into that very heavily here on the show because we'll finally be able to kind of have a countdown and look forward to real college football being played. But the closest thing we get this time of year, of course, are spring games. And Notre Dame had theirs recently. How did Riley Leonard look?
He wasn't able to play in the game, but he did this thing that was a little bit interesting to me. So I feel like the term mental reps gets thrown around a lot, right? Like, oh, he's injured, but he was taking mental reps. That means he was physically there, but he wasn't really doing anything. No, Riley Leonard was standing about 15 yards behind the line of scrimmage. He had his uniform on. He had a brace on his ankle. He could move around. Marcus Freeman said that if it were an actual game, Riley Leonard probably would have been able to play. I'm not really sure I'm buying that. But for this blue and gold game, he sat back and he would literally go through the play as if he was the quarterback, like dropping back, reading the defense, making decisions. That was pretty weird, but I give him credit for doing everything he could to show the rest of the team that, hey, man, he really cares. He wants to be out there so badly. And even though he can't be a full-blown participant, he's going to try to get as much out of it as he possibly can. So that just goes back to what I was saying earlier. Like, it's cool that he's out there, that he's trying his best, but obviously you'd much rather see him out there. But the other quarterbacks behind him looked really good, including true freshman CJ Carr, who is, borderline 5-star recruit coming out of high school, the grandson of Lloyd Carr, the former Michigan head coach who won a national championship. Ton of reasons to be excited about him. He had a really good spring practice, as did a couple other guys. So Riley Leonard's probably looking around like, man, I can't be out for too long because these guys are coming.
Exciting times in South Bend, Indiana. I almost forgot the city where Notre Dame is, but fun fact, I have been to that campus to call a game once before. When the Southern Utah women's basketball team made the NCAA tournament, we flew out to South Bend, and I got to tell you, I was indeed legitimately impressed. Everything.
What month?
That was in March of 2023.
Okay. All right, good thing you didn't go in like February. January,
oh, believe me, we got the sense
December.
that we were walking around the campus at night, and I was just thinking to myself, boy, I bet this thing is bitter in December and January.
Yeah.
Bitter.
March is like starting to clear up. It gets really pretty. The springtime is great, but yeah, man, if you went during like the middle of February when the sun hasn't been out and like 64 straight days or something like that, you'd probably be like, I don't really get it here. But you probably got it on a good day, and I'm glad you
it was good. It was good enough. I'm from Oregon, so anything that's not raining, like even if it is raining, it's not so bad. Tyler Wojciak, Locked On Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Tyler, thanks for coming by.
Appreciate it, man.
Appreciate everyone listening. I will see you next time, and until then, hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.